Our next speaker is famous in context-driven testing community because Richard Bradshaw is really an automation enthusiast. But he will never use the word test automation for a reason, and you're going to find out why. Because testing cannot be automated. But I will let Richard explain. But testing is an intellectual human activity which really cannot be automated, but automation is a tool to assist testers with his activities or her activities. I invited Rich to talk about automation because he's a thought leader in this field globally. He started, he even got on a list on 10 influencers in test automation. There is this list somewhere.
I made it.
Yeah, you made it. You're number 2. So welcome, Rich Bradshaw. He's also from UK, so his accent is interesting.
Okay, I'm going to test the clicker first. Yay. Okay, so I've been told that in New York, everyone likes to talk about automation. Apparently, it's a really hot topic in this town, in the city. So yeah, as Anna said, I don't agree with my description in this program. I don't like the term expert. I'm not an expert. I have experience, and I like to share my opinion. And I have my own views, and I make them aware. But I don't like the term expert. So, automation strategy. Who uses automation? Probably all of you. Yeah, if you don't put your hand up, you're in the wrong place. So, a bit about me. So I work for Friendly Testing. It's a company that exists of just me. So I'm a one-man team at the moment. I also do a lot of work with the Ministry of Testing. I recently joined them as their friendly boss. And I do a YouTube thing called Whiteboard Testing. If you've not had a look, please check it out. It's just basically me stood in front of a whiteboard for 5 to 10 minutes chatting about testing related stuff. And I blog and I send the occasional tweet. Not too many. So, test automation. It's a topic that gets mentioned a lot. We had the guy from TCS earlier, and he mentioned the word automation a lot. It's a topic that people talk about a lot. So, my experience of it, I've been doing testing for 11 years now. It's my only job. I'm not one of these people who fell into testing, even though technically I did, but I didn't do something else and then find my way into testing. I left university having done a year's apprenticeship, and then I ended up in a team, and I ended up working on a regression testing team. We were in a different building from the system testing team, who were in a different building from the UAT testing team, and we never spoke to each other. And that was my first introduction to testing. So, test automation. As Anna said, I'm not going to talk about test automation. I am going to talk about automation. The word test automation for me is tarnished. I've also not started my own timer, so we'll do that first. There we go. So the term test automation for me is tarnished. It means, to a lot of people, it means automated tests. It means automated checks, and that is all they think about when you talk about automation. And automation is far bigger than just having a suite of automated tests. There's so much more usage for it. And it's not a simple case of just taking a test and then automating it. It's part of a bigger picture. So, does anyone know Alan Richardson? Has anyone heard of Alan Richardson? Alan Richardson was the first person to ever speak to me at a testing conference. But funnily enough, I had the name Friendly Tester before I met him, and he's Evil Tester. That's his Twitter name, and his blog, and his persona. But anyway, Alan he's so researched in the space of automation. He's gone back over all the years and all the books to find out the history of the word and how it's used. And now, so I'm refusing to talk about test automation. He's refusing to talk about automation. He wants to talk about what should we automate? What in our process, what in our development, in our testings should we automate? That's what he wants to talk about. And he has been going around talking about that. That's where I stole it from. It's really good to steal things, by the way. It saves you so much time. So I stole this from Alan. And then he wants to talk about what have we automated. Because obviously if you've automated something, it's not just going to live on its own. It's not just going to carry on functioning. Eventually it will break or need changing. So really important that we think about what have we automated. So we'd like to talk about those things. So for me, I'm still talking about automation because I think it's, I'm at that stage where it helps everyone align. But this idea of what we've automated and what we should automate is really, really valuable and allows you to really frame a lot of your discussions around testing. So it's really useful distinctions. So, the state of play. I've been in a lot of teams related around automation, and I've had some ridiculous roles. So I've been the person who rode in on the horse with the silver bullet gun, and I said, don't worry, I've got this. And then I sat in a corner for a year, didn't talk to anyone, wrote a load of suites and a big framework. And then once I'd finished, and then we ran it, and it failed. And then I'd fix it, and then we'd run it, and it would fail. And I'd fix it, and it was torture. I've also been on teams where we've come in and we've wrote really context-specific automation, and it's been a dream. It's been an absolute breeze. But I've also worked in the very first company I had where literally our only job was to write scripts. We didn't even talk to the people who were doing all the other testing. We got delivered test cases, actually via internal mail. They were put in internal mail and they were put on the desk, and you'd take one, you'd automate it, and you'd move on to the next one. Now, I see a lot of places that still work that way, very surprisingly. I also see a lot of places that now they still have the separate teams. So they have the automation team and they have the test team. And we're going to get to that in a little while. Now, in terms of titles, so I've got a list of titles here that I've stolen from a job search engine. So who calls themselves a SEDET? Yeah, no SEDET? There's a few SEDETs in the room. We also have automation testers. I don't even get that. That doesn't even make sense. No. What are you doing? You're like automating the testing of testers. We have automation engineers. And if anyone reads Google's blog post, they've now renamed all theirs to sets. So now you're not a software developer in test, you're a software engineer in test, because apparently that's a really important distinction to make. So there's all these crazy titles that we have in the space of automation, and it's making the whole process, the whole market, really confusing. And it's leading people down this idea that we don't need testers anymore, that we just need automation people. And that it's not true, and hopefully we'll get to explain why. Everyone who has this title, your focus should always be testing. So this is what I see. Some teams, we have the automation team over here, or the automation experts, and they're not involved in your day-to-day running of your team. And then you have your testers over here that might be on a project or in an agile team or not, but they're distinguished. And the problem is they don't align. So the reason they don't align is the people on the right, your left, they're trying to solve the testing problem. That's their focus. They're trying to solve the testing problem. And they need the help of the automation people to help them. But the automation people, they want to write their awesome framework using any vegetable name that you can think of and any latest programming language that comes out. They want to do that. That's their focus. They don't care about your testing problem. They want to build awesome tools. Do everything. One-click buttons that just make everything work. That's their fascination. Now, so we need to stop this. And the only reason I say we need to stop it is if we get too obsessed with this automation area, we lose the sight of the original testing problem. And the fact you had a testing problem in the first place meant that your business probably wanted to know something, or you needed some pieces of information that were of value to your company, and you were trying to get to them. But if you get so obsessed with your tools, then you lose sight of all that, and you end up building some awesome tool that's actually no use to anyone. Another downside of this in really big companies, so when I spoke to Anna, she was saying some of the companies who will be here, they're in giant companies. I worked at one. I lasted 4 days, and then I walked out. And I walked out because they had 23 separate teams, and they had a team of 8 people that were tasked with building a framework for them all. One framework for all 23 teams. It's like, what are all the products? Oh, they're all web-based. Oh, yeah, okay. So, yeah, we just build one web tool. And I was like, really? That's your plan? And they were like, yeah, we're going to build one massive tool that they can all use. And we'll make it really flexible and customizable, and it'll be keyword-driven. And it can report to anywhere you want. And I went, you're going to fail. That's not feasible. You need to make tools, you might be able to have, I don't know, maybe 10 tools, but one big tool. And they were like, no, we're not listening to you. And I gave them a bit more than I'm going to give you. Like, we spent a few days talking about it. And I left, and I spoke to one of my friends there about 3 months later, and he says, we've got 23 tools now. They took one of the people out of the team, and they spread them across the other teams and tried to build one tool. So don't try and build this giant tool, because it's really problematic. It doesn't help the individual testing problem. You end up doing it the other way around. You end up trying to fit your testing problem solution around the tools that your company is trying to push to you, and it doesn't help. It actually restrains and restricts the way that you want to work. So, we need to get them aligned. And the way we get them aligned is we focus on testing. That's what most of you have a job because someone wanted to solve some testing problem. Now, to solve a testing problem, we firstly have to understand what the problem is, which has nothing to do with automation whatsoever. It's a testing problem. So we need to look at the problem, critically think about the problem, and then look in our armor of tactics, knowledge, people we have in the team, our expertise, and then try and design something to solve this problem. However, automation isn't going to go away. Automation right now is being, it's allowing a lot of teams to move a lot faster. It's allowing faster feedback. It's allowing us to extend beyond what a normal tester capabilities are. And what's the politest way of saying it? The agile coachy people say we need it. There's no other way of having it. You need this automation in place. Now, so this is what I see. For me, automation is just a piece of the puzzle. And it's a tiny piece in comparison. So the rest of the white stuff in that picture, it's you. It's the testers, it's the people, it's the developers, it's the people on the team. You wrap around the tools and you design the tools. You fill in the missing pieces. Even if you build a tool and it's perfectly well and functional, it can't live on its own. It can't maintain itself. It has to be maintained by somebody. If you want to create a tool, it has to be built by someone who has the skill set and the knowledge and actually understands what they're trying to do to build the automation. I've seen people recently talking about, apparently there's someone doing a PhD on self-creating automated tests. So they somehow study the system and just create stuff for you and get 100% coverage. You don't have to do anything. So I hope that, if that works, wow, it would be amazing. This conference won't last very long, I know, unfortunately. So this is what we need to do. And in order to make this, we need to look far beyond what kind of things we build. So as I said, right now, the term test automation is mostly fixated around automated tests. And there's more that we can do in regards to automation. So if you think about your own organization right now, you've probably got, you've got lots of pieces of automation lying around. But if you really took the time to have a look and assess it, you probably realize that it's being held together by many people. They're the people that are actually making this automation of value. Automation doesn't tell you that it's found bugs. It tells you that something's, automated checks or tests. I'm going to use checks because it's my terminology. Automated checks, they don't find bugs for you. They just detect change. That's all they know to do. They run and they go, this isn't the same as you told me it was. Something's changed. We then look at it and go, it's a bug. So that's the difference. That's the tie. It's the human doing this stuff. We've just given some of the job to the computer. And we can do that for a lot more than just automated tests. So let's have a look at some of the things we can do. So, I can't read my own slides. So, Fiona mentioned it earlier about being in the room. I'm quite confident in my workplace. If I'm not in the room, I'll go and sit in the room. If I'm not invited to a meeting and the whole team isn't around, I'll go and sit in the room. And then they'll look at me and I'll go, what are we talking about? And then once I've done that for 2 weeks, I'm always invited to the room. They don't stop after that. Now, obviously, not everyone can do that. However, one of the best questions I found to ask is, most people are now involved in pre-planning. It's a bit late in some companies. You really want to be involved in the story creation or the task creation. but most people are involved in pre-planning. So in pre-planning now, this is one of the best questions I always ask. Developers talk and they look at the code and everyone reads the requirements and everyone's dead happy and we've got our planning poker cards out and everyone's a 6 and then everyone's happy and then I just sit in the corner. It's like, I don't mean this to be evil, but I'm sitting there waiting. It's like, how are we going to test this? I'm like, oh, that's your problem. It's like, no, this is our problem. So how are we going to test this? And then that's where we can start inferring and informing our team members on things to make our lives easier. So if you do ask this question, you'll come across, oh, well, you'll just be able to just run, click on this UI and it'll produce this report and you'll have some data. And you go, oh, how can I get at that data? Oh, you'll have to go into SQL and run this really convoluted script. So I don't want to do that. I don't remember these scripts. Oh, okay, well, we could build a tool. Oh, yeah, oh, great, we'll build a tool. So now the stories change and the requirements change based on the fact that we need to be able to test these features. Excuse me. So tools that I've built. Tools that I've built that aren't regular test automation for people or automation. So I'm going to stand over here because I'm a bit blind. I took my glasses off. So monitoring. Someone, I can't remember who it was, someone at Google probably, I think, said advanced monitoring is indistinguishable from testing. I'm not sure really agree with that, but monitoring is a brilliant piece of automation. If you have a lot of monitoring in your live systems, the data that comes out of that, you can design some incredible test ideas from that and get some real insights into your system. So monitoring is a fantastic place to use. We have deployment. There's no reason why a tester can't be involved in designing a pipeline or some CI integration. There's no issues with that. Also, does anyone work in mobile? So I did a class with Steven yesterday, and he's gone away now. But one of the best pieces, well, let's set context. So we have a 5-star iOS app and a 4.5-star Android app based on something like 80,000 reviews. So I'm incredibly proud of our app. But we have 0 GUI automation on our mobile apps, not a single script. I built about 50 of them, and I just deleted them. They were driving me mad. And the tools just aren't mature enough. But the best tool I built was deploying to Android was taking too long. You have to plug every phone in one by one, or you have to set up ADB via the Wi-Fi. So I wrote a script that would take all the devices that are connected, install the app on every single one, start the app, log me into the app, and then stop. And it takes about 3 minutes. When I did it one by one on my own, it took me about 25, 30 minutes to do all the 12, 14 devices. So I now saved myself like 25 minutes twice a day. And I don't believe in ROI in automation. I should have mentioned that earlier. If anyone's ever asked you to do an ROI over here, ask them, say, do I have to do an ROI over here as well? How many people do an ROI on testing? It's very few. But that time, it saved me so much time. So think about these things. Log files is great. I was just chatting with Fiona then about how I do session-based test management. Every time I finish my 2 hours of testing, I run a command that goes and gets all the log files off the systems, downloads them to my machine, and puts them in a zip file so I can attach them to my test report. Because that's evidence. It's useful. It's got value. Step 2, I worked in a bank, and there was a mortgage application process, and you had to do it in steps, but we built them incrementally in steps. So by the time we got to step 8 and I wanted to test step 8, I had to go through 1 to 8. And that's painful. Richard at Testville at Test Town, boring. So I wrote WebDriver scripts that got me to step 8, and then just stopped. So they weren't designed to be automated checks. They weren't designed to pass or fail. They just got me to step 8. And I wrote a GUI, and I said I want 100 windows, 100 Firefox windows, all on step 8, go. Off I go. I can now test. It saves me loads of time. So a few more. Skypebot was a cool one. I've currently changed it to Slackbot. I had a product owner who would refuse to create data for himself. And he would just ping me and say, can you create me a user? Can you create me an account? I was like, you're really annoying me. Because all that would happen is he'd send it to me, I'd run a script on my computer, and then it would create a user. I said, here's the script. He goes, oh, no, I don't understand that. Too complicated. So I hooked it into Slack. I hooked it into Skype. So he could now go onto Skype and go create me a user to a Skype bot, which would call my API, create him a user, and send him back the details. Stopped bothering me. Saved me loads of time. Stop interrupting me. So this is the theme without this. It's context-driven tools. They are things that are specific to my environment, but they save me hours of time. And that means I can test, because I want to test. I don't want to maintain tools. I want to test software to try and find really cool and useful information. So if I'm slating automated checks so much, we must still have them. So I said we don't have them on our mobile app, so I've been in this place about 2 years, but we do have them through the rest of the stack, and we do have a lot of them. So some of the advice for writing really good automated checks, they need to be tiny. The smaller you can make your automated check and targeted and focused on a specific behavior or a specific piece of functionality, the less brittle, falling over, the amount of time it will fail. Some of the traps people find themselves in, but if I'm on this page, I might as well check X, Y, and Z at the same time. It's like, well, when does that stop? Then you end up with this one check that checks 10 different things, and then it starts failing for other reasons, and you're missing out on quick feedback. So make them really small and focused, and they should be standalone. They should never have to. They should never have a need on another one. They should never have to. This is a really bad anti-pattern, but I've been guilty of this in the past. They have to run in an order. So check 5 is based on the fact that check 4 and 3 passed, and they've left some data in a specific scenario, and then 5 will use that data and carry on. Don't do that. It's really difficult. You also want to build around the business risk. So you should automate things that might, if they change, the business reputation might be impacted. That's a very high-level word to use. It could be copy on a marketing page, but to marketing and sales, that's incredibly important. It could be you can't log in. It could be anything, but it has to be a reason for it. And then the final one is things like revenue streams. If you're really going to write a lot of automation, make it mean that it's focused on what the business needs in order to make its money. So they're all tied into a common word, which I don't hear enough people talking about when they talk about automation, and it's about risk. You should base your automation and the things you're designing and the checks and the tools to help you with risk, because those are value. You shouldn't automate everything, and more importantly, you shouldn't do it because you can. So, all the scenarios I run on a web page, I could automate. I'm not going to, because it's madness. It would probably put me in an early grave. But you could do it. And don't get carried away with it's just one more check. It's just one more test. It's just one more. It's just one more. It's not going to make a difference. By the time you realize it, you've got hundreds and thousands of the things, and they take in all day to run. And then you go, I know what the problem is. We need more parallel execution. That's the problem. We should run more of them at once, and then that will solve our problems. No, the problem was way before that. Go back and solve the original problem. And one other thing that not a lot of people talk about, test your automated checks. It sounds crazy, but I mean test. I don't mean write more code to check that code, because that's, I think Michael Bolton told me, turtles all the way down, or whatever that saying goes. But you should run them like 3 times in a row. You should run them when the other checks are running. I wrote a blog post on it, so you can find it on my blog. But you should really test these checks, because if you're using them to help you decide about your application's quality or its level of its performance, if it's changed or not. So they should be tested. And not a lot of people test them. They run it once, it goes green, they push it to CI, and then CI then fails. Oh, it's not my check. Tested my check, it's green. Someone else's. So test them, and test them a lot. So the next question. So I created a model, and I did a whiteboard testing video on it, which there's not a link on there, but if you look for the whiteboard testing YouTube channel. So I drew this model, and let's take a step back. First, I was researching regression testing, because when I hear the terms, I get really frustrated. And the company I was at, the company I'm at now, the guy's left, but he would go, Richard, you need to do a full regression test. All the tests. I was like, do you even know what that means? You know what you're asking me to do? It would say full regression. So I started researching regression testing. And I was on YouTube, and I was watching videos, and they're all an hour and 30 minutes long, which made me start whiteboard testing. Anyway, I drew a model. And The model wasn't called, well, the model didn't have a name. And then I just wrote flawed approach to regression testing on the top. And then my girlfriend went, haha, that says fart. And then I went, oh, it does. And then I realized it's actually really appropriate, because if you go into a company as a consultant and you see them doing this, it's basically a bad smell. And it works. And I was tempted to do a joke about Trump and, relating to that as well, but I don't know much about American politics. But then I don't think Trump does either. So there you go. So the model looks like this. This is surprisingly being liked by people, which makes me feel really happy, but it was never the intention. So the way it is the system's on the outside. The system's always growing because of the fact you have a job. You wouldn't be sat in the room if your system wasn't growing. It may not be growing as in getting bigger, but it will be changing inside. You then have so much knowledge. So there's been talk about knowns and unknowns earlier. You have a fixed amount of knowledge about your system that you're trying to increase all the time. Now, what some people think with regression testing is they can automate all that knowledge, and then we don't have to worry about it anymore. So they try and make the automated checks as big as the knowledge, and then they think they're happy and they're done. And that's all our regression testing now. So we'll just test the new stuff, we'll run all the checks, and if they're green, we'll ship it. The problem lies in that the knowledge you had was based on, this knowledge here was based when the system looked like this. And the system doesn't look like this anymore. It's changed. Yeah, your checks may still be green, but it doesn't mean they're okay. It doesn't mean they're checking the right things anymore. It doesn't mean they're of any value. And also, they end up with gaping holes. There'll be holes in your knowledge now because you haven't gone back and tested all these things, and there'll be holes in your checks. The checks just won't be good enough anymore. So one best of advice is, if you've got a suite of checks or a suite of automated tests, you should review them regularly. Every single sprint, every time you add a new one, go through and check all the old ones and delete them. Don't be afraid to delete them. Just get them out of the code base, and you'll write a new one eventually if you really need to. So yeah, the idea behind this is, saying you automate all your regression testing, to me just sounds idiotic. You have to do some testing, and it has to be focused on the risk of regression. So that's why this model exists. Watch the video, I go into a bit more length about it. And it's got a funny name. So, a few more points of the changing teams. So we've mentioned today we're on agile teams now, and the roles and responsibilities are shifting. Who should build this automation? I actually don't care who builds it. If you spend the time and you review this regularly and you've decided that this piece of automation is going to be of value to your company, whoever has the skill set to build it should build it. It shouldn't be the tester or the automation or the developers, whoever's available at the time. It's the same as a story. The story has been designed, or the feature, because the business wants it. And the automation or your tools that you've decided to build shouldn't be treated any differently. If you prioritized it, it should be built by whoever can build it. And don't want to get onto that topic, but not every tester needs to know how to code. I'm doing a Lego class tomorrow, and it's all about theory. Designing good automation is a critical thinking, modeling, systems thinking, problem-solving exercise. You don't need coding ability to do that. You just need to be able to think about a problem and then find someone who has the coding ability. James Bax talks about it's like having a friend with a pickup truck. You don't have to do that. You don't have to have your own pickup truck. You just go and get someone else's when you need it. So in terms of who builds it, anyone can build it who has the right skill set. And if you want to start spreading the skill set, start talking to developers about designing good automated checks. At the places I'm at now, the bit below the mobile app, all the developers write the automated checks, but they're designed in pre-planning. So in pre-planning, we sit down and we talk what should be automated. We decide that these need these tools, and we need these 10 checks, and it's the developer's responsibility to deliver them, along with their code, which allows me to test. We want new information. We've changed our system. I need to test to get that. If you're just spending tools all day, if you're sat in the corner building tools, you're not learning anything about the system anymore. You will still learn a few things because you've got to look at the tool, but you've got to look at the code base to design your automation, but you're not really digging deep. You're not really exploring. And we need more exploring. We need more testing. And then finally, all these crazy job titles that we have, I've started calling people toolsmiths. Funny enough, so did Michael and James. But I originally stole this from Mozilla. So everyone at Mozilla, if anyone knows anyone at Mozilla, a guy called David Burns, he calls himself a toolsmith, and he's been calling himself that since I've known him, so like 10 years. And they just get to build stuff that makes stuff visible or makes stuff easier. And that's all they do. That's their job. And I think we need more of these in the testing space. We need toolsmiths who are enablers. They need to enable us to test. They need to enable us to explore. Basically creating things that allow you to do your job. And if your job is to be a tester and to find information, as I said, you want tools that just help you dig deeper, find more information out. So I think the future of the automation in this space is going to be toolsmiths, mainly because as well, we are moving at incredible speeds now in some companies. Some aren't moving at all, snail's pace. But some companies are trying to move really fast now. And there is zero time for the old traditional of sitting down writing lots of automated checks. The time just doesn't exist. So we need smart ways of testing. And as a human, we have a human brain which allows us to process things incredibly quickly. We can pick things up incredibly quickly. Yet people are obsessed with trying to educate a computer to do this for us. We don't need the computer to do all this for us. We need the computer to do bits of it. And we can do the rest. We can piece this together. So in terms of a strategy, because we're meant to be talking about strategy, there's a few key points, but the summary is that we need to carry on focusing on the actual testing problem that we're trying to solve. Don't focus on the automation problem. If you find yourself focusing on the automation problem, you've probably gone off track. And you could probably try and trace it back to the original thing you were trying to solve. Again, critical thinking is essential in deciding what you should automate. Definitely need to do that. And someone mentioned it earlier about where you should test. I don't care where people put their automation. If the skill set you have means that it should be on the GUI, put it on the GUI. But don't go and do hundreds of them. And don't just leave it there. Put a plan in place to try and move them down. So my strategy is just to get it as low as you possibly can, but with the skills that you have. Don't spend hours or days trying to get lower down if you don't have the knowledge. Work quickly, and then once you do find some time, try and learn some new tools to move them down. And it will be a lot easier. So that's my summary of strategy. Thank you.